Welcome to Comics Bazaar, the channel of comics commentary and arcana. This video features the Uncanny X-Men number 275, cover dated April 1991, and this is, as the cover corner box declares, a giant-sized 275th issue spectacular. The story itself is 40 pages long, and you're getting that double-sized comic for only 50 cents more than the usual price of $1. So really great value here. Plus, of course, you have this amazing triple gatefold cover, penciled by Jim Lee and inked by Scott Williams. Really great work on all of the figures on the cover. The X-Men wearing the original Jack Kirby design uniforms, but redesigned by Jim Lee, so they look much more modern. A great design layout on this, where we have our mysterious warlord here in the middle, and at the side of the 3-page cover we have Zaladane, Magneto, Rogue. Great hatching and cross-hatching on these figures, and over on the other side we have got Deathbird, Gladiator, and Magistrex Lilandra as well. So really well composed, nice design. The only little change I would make here, a teeny tiny change, is I'd flip Zaladane there so that we have a much better mirror imaging across the 3 pages. Okay, so after admiring this wonderful cover, let's fold it up and get into the story inside. We have 2 stories going at the same time. We have what's happening with the Shi'ar and the X-Men who were teleported there by Lila Cheney at the end of issue 273. And we have the conclusion of Magneto versus Zaladane in the Savage Land. But we start with the Shi'ar business, a great splash page there of this mysterious warlord from the cover. And he is in the middle of the Starjammers. And Ka-Zar here is surprisingly calling out for Lilandra, because of course the Starjammers have no love for the Shi'ar and indeed for Magistrex Lilandra. So why on earth are the Starjammers fighting for her? For the Empire, the glory, for freedom, the Starjammers strike. So great image there by Lee and Williams. And now turn the page and we get a great double page spread and our title story and credits. So the title of the story is The Path Not Taken. The creator credits here: Chris Claremont and Jim Lee credited with the story. So they're co-plotting, Chris Claremont providing the script, of course, Lee the pencils, Scott Williams inker, but there is an ink assist to Carl Alstadter, who was present, who was a member of Jim Lee and Wills Portacio's Homage studio, and the rest of the creative team: Tom Warzakowski on the letters, and Glynis Oliver and Joe Rosas sharing the colouring duties on this double-sized feature. The banner script there is interesting: Storm, Wolverine, Banshee, Gambit, Psylocke, Forge, Jubilee. So this is the new X-Men team after the Outback era. Mutants all, who have banded together to defend their kind from prejudice and persecution, and who fight to bring all humanity together in peace. Now, great upshot here of the Apocalypse class Behemoth flagship of the Imperial fleet, and right here underneath it is the Starjammer, and it is docked to the flagship. So really nice upshot there, spotting of blacks, rendering of outer space as well. Good stuff from Lee and Williams. And we've got an image here of the Starjammers entering through that breach and encountering resistance from, first of all, the Shi'ar security aboard the ship, and then Gladiator and the Imperial Guard there. So we're going to have a big fight coming up. Our intelligence told us, "True, comrades," says Raza, "the usurper hath brought the Imperial Guard to protect her." And Gladiator responds, "Which we are prepared to do, rebel, if need be, with our lives." And with that proud cry, the battle is joined. So what an action-packed opening to this particular issue. And then the scene switches to what was happening at the end of 274. Deathbird here, she has the X-Men captured with her pet, as she calls it, Manacle, and they are unable to injure the creature with their individual powers, because every time those tentacles are cut, for example, by Wolverine, they heal again. So Wolverine's thinking here, he's thinking exactly about that, and Jubilee spots him straining at those tendrils. Wait, Wolvie's straining, he's going to bust a gut. She thinks to herself, but will self-preservation make him back off even a little? Yeah, sure, right. Thing is, he's stretching that tentacle awful tight. My fireworks sure ain't doing me any good. Maybe it'll be different with him. Nothing to lose by trying. And that works. So X-Men always teaches the lesson, to work as a team. You'll do much better. And that's exactly what's happening here. It's a really nice anchor image there of all of the team caught by Deathbird's pet. Now turn the page and we get another great anchor image of Wolverine taking on Deathbird. He's pushing up her jaw there, getting ready to strike with his adamantium blades. But somehow or other she gets round back of him. She twists around and she thinks to herself rather, I do not believe it. The man is a shadow of his true self, as though his flesh has all but failed him and his life force remains sustained solely by an indomitable will. So Wolverine has not been himself since Uncanny X-Men 205 and the battle with Lady Deathstrike. He's been increasingly weakened, most particularly in issue 251 when he was tortured by Donald Pierce and the Reavers in the Australian outback. And so Deathbird here is acknowledging that to herself. But it's intriguing because there was a creative disagreement between Claremont and Jim Lee regarding Wolverine. Claremont had his long-term plan for Wolverine. He wanted to kill him off and then bring him back as an assassin of the hand. And Jim Lee simply wanted to draw Wolverine in his prime. And so you're getting a balance here and a tension between what you're seeing in the art and what Claremont is writing in with the script, including their Deathbird's thought balloons. So next page here, we get Wolverine fighting back against Deathbird and cutting through the tentacles that were holding Jubilee. So she's free now, but Deathbird kicks him in the back and she blasts Jubilee. Nice down shot here on Jubilee on the ground. A screen tone there used for the cast shadows, and Deathbird making ready to spear Wolverine in the back, which he does. We don't actually see it. We get the sound effect there, and we get Jubilee's horrified reaction as she sends her fireworks after a fleeing Zaladane. But of course, Wolverine does have his healing factor, even if it is struggling to keep up with the damage he's taking. And this is a great little scene here where he whispers up to Jubilee that he isn't quite dead yet. The spear, pull it out. So she's there and she's really kind of alarmed and worried at what he's asking her to do. I know it's hard, he says to her. This is really good dialogue from Claremont. Don't think about it, girl. Close your eyes if you have to. Don't sass me, just do it. And so she does. She pulls the spearhead from his back, and we get classic Linus Oliver for a moment of violence, a blood red background. And then she starts protesting. What are you? Where are you? Wolverine, you're hurt. That is the most incredibly macho. I hate it. Even healthy, you're no match for. She was about to say Deathbird when he says he's going to get better. Great image of him there, hunched over and stalking after Deathbird. And Storm tells Jubilee, screaming at the man will not help, nor will chasing after him by yourself. Release the rest of us so that the X-Men may act as a team. So Jubilee protests, and there's just great lettering here from Tom Orzechowski. We've got the sound effect there, but we've got the way that the rhythm of the way that she pronounces Wolverine's codename there. Wolverine is bolded, the first syllable and the last syllable. It's really, really good stuff. You really get a sense of the tone and volume of the way that people are speaking on this page, as well as the use of the question mark and the exclamation mark there as well. It is really, really good stuff. So Jubilee here muttering, I swear, why I hang out with these lameoid flatlines is a total mystery, almost as much as why Wolvie cares about them so much. and she tells Storm to hold still while she cuts away at that tentacle to free the X-Men's leader. And just as she's doing that, the scene is interrupted by the arrival of the Starjammers, specifically Shi'ar, who arrives, and all these guns are trained on Jubilee. That's a great little reaction from her there as she yells that she gives up. And who arrives in except for Lilandra, who tells the Starjammers and her other soldiers there to back off. Warriors, put up your weapons, she commands. Unlike my sister, we do not slaughter children, and most especially not our dearest friends. For shame, Starjammer, not recognizing the X-Men, even if their role has somewhat changed since last we met, because of course Lilandra knows Storm and she knows Banshee, but none of the others. So Jubilee asks, you know these guys? For almost as long as Wolverine, Banshee and I have been X-Men, says Storm. Circumstances notwithstanding, she says to Lilandra, it's good to see you again. And we get this little funny introduction between Shi'ar and Jubilee, where he tells her his name and she just responds, Gesundheit. That's my name, small mammal. Oh, I knew that. And then she kind of like gives a little yeek there at the end. That's good stuff. Nice top-down shot here from Jim Lee. Really well composed. This particular image with the figures, nicely done as the X-Men pull off the tentacles from around their shoulders and arms. And we still have got Lila Cheney there in the background as well. Good stuff on this page. Now, this is a really interesting panel to me. So we have the X-Men following Lilandra into the Shi'ar ship. But look at what Jim Lee has done. He did not have to do this. So we get to see out the windows at the Starjammer docked to the side of the Shi'ar flagship. Now, he said that's a difficult thing to do. He didn't have to do that. We could just have them in a corridor with no windows out looking at the side of the Starjammer. That is really good stuff from Jim Lee. He's super confident in the fact that he can draw anything, and it is really well done. So here we have Lilandra's soldiers arriving to say the usurpers' forces are making a stand on the primary bridge. We have engaged the core cadre of the Imperial Guard. So Lilandra answers Jubilee's question about where the heck are we. She says, consider this a galaxy far from your own Milky Way. Little Star Wars reference there. Home of the Shi'ar Empire. We are the rebels. Deathbird, my sister, the usurper who stole my throne. We're fighting to take it back. So any reader who missed the previous couple of issues of X-Men is all caught up now on what is going on. And I like Forge's reaction here. You know, Claremont gives him something to say and it gets picked up later in the issue as well. Another galaxy. So Forge is very intrigued by that. He's never been outside of Earth. Jubilee here, her head is blown as well. Can I go home now, please, she asks. Great image here of Jubilee riding on Storm's back as everybody gets geared up for the fight to come against the Imperial Guard. Hardware, anyone, says Chad as he hands out big, huge space guns to Psylocke, and Forge here has already got one. And now we've got this nice top-down shot on Gladiator here, having gotten the better of Ka-Zar. It's good stuff. And Jubilee asks a pertinent question. There's the fight, but how do we tell who's who? I mean, I've never met these guys, good or bad. Banshee simply says, follow our lead, Colleen. For the moment, though the villains appear the ones... he says, for the moment, though, the villains are the ones who appear to be winning. Nice little use of a screen tone there as well. This is a really good page. Lots of work on this page. Also, lots of print coming from the Dungeons & Dragons ad onto the page itself. And now, turn the page and we get a big double page spread. And it's a fight between the X-Men and Lilandra's Starjammers and the Imperial Guard. And Claremont says up here, for the uninitiated among you who may have lost track over the decades, a lineup. So we get names for everyone here, and that was really nice addition. But also, if you pay close attention to all of the names, there's a name missing for one character on the page, and it's the Warlord up here using a Psybolt against Oracle. And yeah, so who is the Warlord? That is a mystery yet to be resolved. Great images, great figure drawing on this page. Really like the way that characters are moving distinctly, like Psylocke here, or Gambit back here. That's a really good pose on Gladiator, who of course is the Shi'ar's version of Superman. And a nice shot and angle on Storm there as well. Good stuff. So let's continue with the story. Remember, Wolverine stalked off after Deathbird. Well, he catches up with her just as she's about to scarp her in an escape pod. And he says to her here from the shadows, it's a really nice image with his glowing red eyes. He says, just ain't your day, is it, darling? It's just great macho dialogue and laconic Wolverine speech from Claremont from the script. Very good stuff. And Deathbird says to herself, I should have remembered, you do not die as easily as most, Wolverine. A mistake I shall not make again. And then the scene switches at that moment. So the fight continues, but it's over in short order because of the combined efforts of the X-Men Starjammers and Lilandra's Pinder shock troops. So now we've got a nice panel here of everybody standing on the horizon line. You get the relative heights of the different characters. Gambit's the tallest there. His hair is helping with that too. And Lilandra says, we've won a great victory, my friends, but it counts for nothing if my sisters escaped. And just at this point, Wolverine arrives with an unconscious Deathbird. No need for worries on that score, Lil, he says. Appears you just won back your throne. So everybody's happy, but Storm has got a question. She says, somehow Deathbird duped Lila Cheney into teleporting us here, ostensibly to rescue Charles Xavier. We were to be her cat's paws, our mission to slay our mentor. We saw or sensed no sign of Professor X during the battle. Lilandra, where is he? Is he well? And Lilandra just smiles there. Turn the page, and big revelation as the Warlord takes off his elaborate helmet, and he says, and where else would the consort royal be but by the side of his beloved, especially when he also serves as her Warlord. So everybody's delighted to see him, and Professor X hasn't been seen in the flesh since New Mutants 51, but in terms of Uncanny X-Men, all the way back in, if memory serves, around Uncanny X-Men 203, 204. So he's been a long time gone from this particular title. So you can see the old stalwarts of the X-Men, Banshee, Wolverine, and Storm, delighted to see Professor X. The others here having different reactions who've never met him before. So that's the legendary Charles Xavier, says Forge. And Jubilee's not impressed. Big deal. Way the old timers talk, I figured he'd be something real flash. He's just some ancient bald geek. That's good stuff in Claremont's dialogue. And Gambit chimes in, nice talk, Shiar. I ain't your Shiar Cajun, and I say what I please. And she thinks privately to herself, I don't like this guy. I don't like this place. I want to go home. So she just being a teen brat, or is she onto something? And now the scene switches to the best part of this comic. Back in the Savage Land, and we're seeing the UN strike team, what remains of it, preparing for a dawn raid on Zaladane Citadel. So great opportunity now for Jim Lee to show off his skill drawing tech, including these gunship transport helicopters. And we've got a nice little scene here as well. I like the way he moves the camera in this scene across these three panels. So we're looking at the pilot here, and if you pay close attention to his name badge, it's Portaccio. He's got that little pencil mustache that Portaccio wore in this era. It's basically a portrait of Whilce Portaccio here, a little Easter egg in joke. And the pilot says, sorry, Colonel Fury, flying manual and eyeballing the terrain. This is as low as we dare go. Do your best, Major, responds Fury. Magneto's right, blast him. Something in the atmosphere down here is lousing up all our electronics, so that even when the systems seem to work, we can't afford to trust them. But see what Lee is doing here. So we're looking at the pilot here, Major Portaccio, and then the camera moves towards Ka-Zar here, and turns a little so that we see Fury at the open door smoking his cigar, and then it zooms over the heads of these sitting soldiers so that we're looking more closely at Fury, and then we see Rogue here sitting behind him as well. And I also like how in Claremont's dialogue we have an indication of that Rogue isn't just sitting silently or quietly or stilly. Will you stop fidgeting, Rogue asks the Colonel. I'd love to, she says, if I could only get this stupid suit to fit comfortably. So we have this whole business here with the suit, the battle suit that Rogue is wearing. And Ka-Zar makes a joke, but Rogue, honey, you look so gosh darn cute. Lucky for you, Ka-Zar. She responds, I'm a lady, else I'd say something real rude. Kidding aside, Ka-Zar responds, it's time you face facts. Your mutant powers are gone, and they appear to be gone thus far. No flight, no super strength, no invulnerability, no absorbing others' abilities with a touch. And Fury chimes in and says, just because you've been lucky, girl, doesn't mean you'll stay that way. You need the protection. Changing the subject, Colonel, says Rogue. You mind me asking if you really think this Apocalypse Now charge of the Valkyrie stunts got an ever-loving prayer? And Fury says, ask my strike force's vice commander, Colonel Semyonov. It's his plan. But great image here. This kind of, we're slightly looking up at Fury as he's looking out the helicopter door. Rogue's gotten up. He's still got a cigar there. Really, really great shot. Excellent, excellent stuff. It made me think, I wish that Jim Lee had completed that graphic novel with The Punisher and Nick Fury rules of the game. That would have been an excellent comic, at least visually, if that had ever been completed. So, Semyonov says its doctrine about proven in the crucible of combat, recommends an aerial assault immediately preceding the sunrise, but Ka-Zar makes the point, the sun doesn't set. There's no dawn in the Savage Land in the summer. The best you can hope for is what we've got now, this grainy twilight. So Semyonov is happy enough with that, all the better for us. Zaladane's forces are human. They have to sleep sometime. This way we catch them when their inner resources are at their lowest ebb. And at that point, Magneto chimes in because he's part of the attack force. This is not Afghanistan, Colonel, he says, and I submit these savages have capabilities, the likes of which you cannot begin to imagine. For one, their leader, Zaladane, how pray tell will you combat that self-styled mistress of magnetism? And Zaladane has been characterized here in Claremont's script in the previous issue and this one as basically a dark reflection of Silver Age Magneto himself. She's like a Silver Age type villain. So Semyonov says, your vaunted force fields would slide off the hulls of these helicopter gunships like water off a duck because they've been constructed exclusively of non-ferrous metals and ceramics, so presumably that will be proof against Zaladane. Rogue isn't impressed. She asks, is this bozo for real or what? Nicholas, I could KO these babies with a rock. And how are you all gonna fight hurricane force wind sheer through every flight dimension? Or best of all, a wall of solid iron raised right in front of you, too close to dodge. Semyonov is getting angry here. My assumption, girl, is that since we have the so-called Master of Magnetism as our ally, he will protect us? And Magneto responds, I can try. Rogue says, what's with the Rusky? To Fury, he sure doesn't like don't much like Magneto. I like this shot of Fury's profile here, this close-up on his profile, the way the nose is rendered there with the hatching as well, the open nostril. Not real surprising, he says. Magneto killed his son. So that was established in the previous issue, that the Colonel's son went down with the nuclear submarine Leningrad, that Magneto sunk way back in Uncanny X-Men 150. Turn the page and there's a plot twist. The Colonel shoots Magneto in the back and calls out, you mutant butcher, for all the Rodinas, murdered sons. So translated from the Russian, and Rodina there means motherland. So his crew are horrified. What are you doing? You've shot down one of our own because Magneto knocks into one of their helicopters and all those men go down into the jungle canopy, a regrettable but necessary sacrifice. Lieutenant, says the colonel, great top-down angle there. My orders were to eliminate Magneto. That I've done. And what about the rest of us, you fool, says his subordinate. Without his power, how do we defend ourselves against them? So we see Zaladane's warriors on the pterosaurs, and time passes. It's a great rendering there of the tree trunks down on the ground in the jungle, and somebody's been eaten up by this particular dinosaur, and Rogue getting licked by this horrifying tongue of this particular dinosaur, which wakes her up just in time as she is caught in the maw of the dinosaur. And just as well then that she was wearing that battle suit. It really did save her life. Body armor's doing its job, she thinks, bless it, but for how long? Sure ain't gonna wait to find out. And then she knocks the dinosaur under the nose there. Looks like under the nose. Pop, just a teeny tiny little sound effect, but it knocks the dinosaur right out. Nice hit. Didn't figure I had that in me anymore, she thinks to herself. And then she's just horrified by all the teeth. And I like this little bit of characterization here. Like, Claremont doesn't have to do this, but it gives Rogue human depth and dimension, just like the parts I couldn't bear to watch in Jaws. So now we know Rogue watched Jaws, and she closed her eyes for the bit with the shark when it ate up Quint from the boat. And there we see that helicopter that was downed earlier. So are there any survivors at all? Rogue is making her way up towards the helicopter. There's poor Whilce Portacio. You can see his name badge. He's getting eaten up by that dinosaur. And the dinosaur is attacked by Zabu and Ka-Zar, who swing in, but they're not in time to save Major Whilce Portacio. He's got his ribs sticking out of him there. Poor devils, says Ka-Zar. This is a great panel here with Fury descending from the treetop, having gotten as much as he could save from the helicopter gunship. I know it sounds callous, he says, but the faster and farther away we're from here, the better, before Zaladane's people come hunting. And I mean, Nick Fury knows war, and he knows the horror of war, and he knows that you've got to make tough decisions like that. You cannot be sentimental. So now here they are regrouping, and we're definitely moving into the section of the comic that's colored by Joe Rosas. One of the telltale Joe Rosas tropes from this time period is these like swatches of color here that he puts into all white backgrounds. So very typical of him. You can see it also here, the way he's rendering that murky twilight there behind Nick Fury. So they take stock, and Rogue has a question for Fury. You know, she says to him, it was your buddy Semyonov that nailed us by shooting Magneto in the back. There a piece on your program you ain't telling us about, or maybe don't know yourself? Nicholas, old chum, what the devil's going on up there? And that reminds me again that in the previous issue, Rogue's dialogue suggested that she and Nick Fury knew each other going back a long time. Is it just a figure of speech, old chum? Or is there some portion, is Claremont hinting in the dialogue that there's some portion of Carol Danvers' psyche still in there in Rogue's unconscious? Because it's Carol Danvers, Major Carol Danvers, and Colonel Nick Fury, who are old chums. In any case, the scene switches to Zaladane Citadel, and that's where Semyonov has made his way. And he's proposing to be a type of, consigliere for Zaladane, and also to negotiate diplomatic legitimacy for her realm on the world stage. He says, Madam, you may well find you'll achieve far more through the arts of statecraft than of war. And she responds, it seems she's taking something of a fancy to Semyonov, at least in Jim Lee's art, but it won't be anywhere near so much fun. And Semyonov continues and says, the savage land acknowledged as a sovereign state, and you as its ruler in return for peaceful coexistence with your fellow nations. So Zaladane is thinking about that, but she has, as I said earlier, the characterization of a Silver Age villain. And so she says, assuming I agree, what guarantee have I your masters will honor this bargain? I think you'll find a full measure of respect and not a little fear for the woman responsible for the ultimate destruction of Magneto. So that's what she's intending to do. Now, turn the page. We're back in the jungle. At this point, I think that Karl Alstadter is getting involved with some inking assists on some of the coming pages. There's a slight difference in the style of the hatching on these pages that isn't quite what Scott Williams was doing earlier in the issue or prior to this. And as I said, that's what makes me think that Karl Alstadter is involved. So here we have some discussion about the dinosaurs in the jungle and how they seem to be smarter. References back to the destruction of the Savage Land and then its restoration by the High Evolutionary, as told in X-Men Annual number 12. You'll find a review of that annual here on the channel if you're interested in that. So the dinosaurs are getting smarter, and I like the way that Lee has them here in the corner of the panel, and the little red eye there that's watching them over here in silhouette. Things have changed, Colonel, says Ka-Zar. Take my word, these lizards were smart enough already. They didn't need any help. Lord knows what they're like now, or for that matter, where they'll be in a year. So that's Claremont setting up, for the future, maybe another annual. Maybe he's got an idea that he'd like to have a story in the Savage Land again in the future and have the dinosaurs be an even greater threat than they've ever been in the past. But I've a nasty feeling, says Ka-Zar, finding out it's going to be a rude surprise. So let's turn the page, continue with the story. We go back into the Citadel, and Zaladane's got a machine by which she's going to transfer Magneto's powers to her, just as she had Lorna Dane Polaris's powers transferred to her way back in Uncanny X-Men 249 and 250. So Brainchild here says, this is the process of transferal, whereby, as the name implies, our dread liege draws all Magneto's energies into herself. Semyonov says he resists. For all the good that does him, poor stubborn fool, says Brainchild, he merely prolongs what must be indescribable agony. When the procedure is complete, Magneto will be less than dust, and Zaladane all. And Zaladane here, drawing in that power, and in the image, the upshot that Jim Lee has drawn, it looks like that she's enjoying the process as well. And now we get on this page, really, really intriguing stuff. So we already had in the previous issue a callback to Fire in the Night, Classic X, the backup story by Chris Claremont and John Bolton in Classic X-Men number 12. You'll find a review of that on the channel. And also Classic X-Men number 19, I, Magneto, and Magneto's time as a Nazi hunter, and when his beloved Isabel's throat is cut by those he thought his trusted friends, the Americans he was working for. So we get flashbacks here because an effect of the machine is that he's beginning to discorporate, and because he's losing control of his physical self, he's losing control of the psyche as well. Brainchild says here as he grins in pleasure at Magneto's pain, the raw material of his most intimate memories translated by my computer into form we can perceive. He says to the Colonel, behold, comrade Colonel, secrets I'll wager none others on this planet are privy to. And you can see here again, different inking technique from, is it Scott Williams or is it Jim Lee inking himself? If I had to guess, I would say this is Jim Lee inking himself on this particular page. And it's good, it's effective, it's different. I like the ink splotches here. I like the thick ink lines rendering the anatomy of Magneto here on the machine where he's uplit. Reminds me of some of the thick line inking in Dark Knight Returns, which was a comic that Jim Lee was a big fan of. And also there's a little narrative mystery here in the bottom part of the page. Magneto thinks to himself once more, rage flashes through me, hand in hand with a terror I'd not felt since Auschwitz, as at last I confront the Shadow King, followed by sick shame at the awful cost of my survival. We have never seen this story. Claremont never told this story. This is an untold story of Magneto versus the Shadow King. Now, the Shadow King at this time is being built up by Magneto as a threat that will continue for the X-Men until issue 300, where he'll be finally defeated by Professor X, where Professor X will die in the fight, and Magneto will succeed Professor X as leader of the X-Men. But all of that is evolving and developing because of the creative conflicts with Jim Lee. Originally, when Rogue was turned up in the Savage Land in issue 269, at the end of issue 269, Claremont had intended that she would be found and helped by Loki, and Jim Lee insisted it would be Magneto. And so from that point on, and Lee's determination that Magneto be an antagonist for the X-Men, Claremont began redeveloping his ideas for the lead up to issue 300. He hasn't yet resolved to quit the X-Books, but things are changing and evolving. But as I said, we have never seen this story told. So it would be nice for Claremont to revisit this and explain what it was all about. So at this point, Zaladane cries out, "Enough, that was magnificent," and it leaves Magneto very much in a withered, shrunken state. So he's nothing but skin and bones at this point, but he still is deadly dangerous. He challenges Zaladane. "The power and glory you so desperately, pathetically crave, is it turning out to be more than you can handle?" Semyonov is amazed. "Blessed Peter," he exclaims, "that look. This is too dangerous, Zaladane. End this now. Kill him." But she tells the Colonel to calm himself. She knows his first name now as well. There's an implication that these two have been intimate by this point. It's no more than an old wolf's last gesture of defiance. I like that phrasing. So Magneto is down, but he's conscious, and Zaladane foolishly says, "We'll leave Magneto to the tender mercies of you and your pets." She says that to Brainchild. But outside the Citadel, there's a ruse. So Rogue is running from a dinosaur, it seems. How did she get into this Savage Land gear? She's begging for help. These guards outside take a shine to Rogue and start betting on whether she'll escape the dinosaur or not, and also hinting at what they'll do to her when they catch her. But Raza here, or Gaza rather, Gaza, who's blind but has a radar sense rather like Daredevil, asks them, "What big tooth? What dinosaur? Cretin, there's nothing out there." And just at that point, it's too late. Rogue barrels into them. Whammo. They're knocked to the ground. She's real, and she was using Magneto's holographic image inducer, which he used in the previous issue, in which he says there he handed over to her prior to him being knocked from the sky. So here we've got Zabu, Nicholas Fury, Ka-Zar, and they make their way into Zaladane's Citadel. And just a little detail here that I like is the way that the shading is rendered on the steps down into Zaladane's Citadel. So we've got very interesting hatching style there on the steps. The question is it Scott Williams, or is Carl Alstadter involved in some of the background inks on this page? So here we have the trio hiding behind a pillar just as Magneto is being taken off the machine by Nereel and Shanna as the Colonel and Zaladane look on. And just at this point, Magneto spots Rogue, Ka-Zar, and Nicholas Fury, and he moves, and he thinks to himself in his internal monologue, "They think me beat and finished, a mistake many have made in the past. As I found the strength as a boy to survive being machine gunned and buried alive, and later the unimaginable horror of Auschwitz, so do I find it in me here and now to break free." And this is an interesting conjunction, reminding us, of Magneto's time in Auschwitz. But in Auschwitz, he was Sonderkommando, which means that he was somebody who was kept in reasonably good health and fitness by the Nazis, as a person who would pull the bodies from the gas chambers into the crematoria and bring the other bodies, burned bodies, and bury them. So he was used for physical slave labor and kept in good shape on that account. But here he is reduced to the physical decrepitude of the inmates of Auschwitz who were not so lucky, who starved to death. And it's an interesting irony in the art and in the script here. So Ka-Zar, Fury and Rogue come guns blazing, Zabu too. Brainchild here says rather redundantly, we're under attack, but Zaladane has the power of magnetism, and she uses it to knock everyone into walls and the floor, and she's not too concerned about preserving her modesty either. Semyonov saves her from the masonry that Rogue knocks loose from the roof, and Zaladane explains, this is stone, I don't know yet how to manipulate my magnetic fields to stop it from falling. She just doesn't have the expertise of someone like Magneto with those powers. And Rogue realizes at this point, as she flies free from the ceiling, that she's got her power of flight back. So the Carol Danvers powers, the Ms. Marvel powers are coming back to her. Great anchor image of her here. She picks up Magneto, drops him on the ground, and says, one of y'all are Zabu, watch out for Magneto. But he responds, comparable to Wolverine's machismo, do not concern yourself, I can manage. So Magneto the stoic. So Rogue here taking out Zaladane's warriors in the Citadel. That's another great anchor image of her too. Nick Fury getting kicked in the jaw by Shanna, saying, blasted Shanna, I don't want to hurt you. And this is funny from Ka-Zar saying, sorry, Colonel, but they don't call my wife the she-devil for nothing. But just at this point, Rogue is blasted from behind by Zaladane. And while everyone is distracted by the fighting, in the confusion, I've been forgotten, thinks Magneto to himself. Damage to Brainchild's apparatus appears mostly cosmetic. The device itself appears functional, or so I hope. If I'm wrong, so Zaladane here gets ready to crush Rogue with a whole bunch of machinery. Rogue here, nowhere to go, can't dodge the hit. This is going to hurt, she thinks. And this is intriguing here. We see what Magneto sees what's happening. Circuitry linkage almost established. Don't think about her, he says to himself. Too much is at stake. If I act prematurely, I'll be defenseless against Zaladane, and everything will be dust. A matter of seconds would have made the difference. I should have been faster. So he's absolutely horrified that maybe he wasn't fast enough to save Rogue. She's covered by that machinery. And he's back to full physical fitness. And he's thinking, my mind is aflame with a fury I don't even try to deny. Using flesh and power both, I tear at the rubble, cursing myself for being too slow, too careful, yet knowing that given the same chance I would have made the same decision. Fearful I'm about to behold the body of yet another whom I cared for. On the periphery of my awareness, I sense a shift in energy patterns. That means Comrade Colonel Semyonov is leveling his weapon. I respond in kind. So we see this broken wiring, shimmering there, moving. What's Magneto going to do with it? Turn the page. He electrocutes. Basically, no, he shoves it right through Semyonov's chest and out his back, and then electrocutes him. So he executes Semyonov. But there's a great little piece of dialogue here between the two. I'm sorry for your son, Colonel, says Magneto. He didn't have to say that, but this is Claremont really showing the complexity of Magneto's character. He's neither simply good nor simply evil, which is more than I ever heard for the slaughter of those I loved. Your daughter, you mean? Asked Semyonov. He's seen his memories earlier, a few pages earlier, and he asks, and that absolves you of any crime? I never said it did. For who we are and what we have done, Comrade Colonel, we are both of us condemned. And he executes him. So Rogue is up, helped up by Fury. Zaladane's mutates here are all wrapped up, and Magneto has Zaladane surrounded by all of these sharp metallic objects. So long as this creature exists, The threat remains, he says. Your precious victory is meaningless. Fury says to him, she's beaten, mister. Do you still not comprehend, Fury? She would have destroyed the world. So Magneto says there can only be one master of magnetism. Let me get this great page. 12 panels. It is a really tense moment. And what is weighing in the balance is Magneto's soul in many ways. Is he going to kill Zaladane, who is defenseless now, or not? Rogue argues with him. She says, stop it. And when Fury says, don't force me to bring you into Magneto. You just fought to help each other. Doesn't that mean anything? Magneto, you hate the Russians because of what happened to your daughter. And Semyonov, you, because of his son. The blood and rage and hate, they can't sustain you. Don't you see? Only destroy? Is that what you want? You found a better way with the X-Men, she says. Do you want to turn your back on it? And this is Magneto's cold response. But not a malevolent response. A response that is beyond good and evil. And for those efforts, Rogue, what have I accomplished? The New Mutants were left in my charge and they suffered for it. Because I tried to pattern myself after Charles Xavier, I am not Charles Xavier, as he closes his fist. I will never be Charles Xavier. And those sharp objects moving closer to Zaladane, she knows she's had it. I was a fool to try. And Rogue shouts out, no, as he was, for believing I could succeed. And she is absolutely ripped to pieces by all of those sharp metallic objects. And we just hear her scream there, and we see the blood on her hand and the force lines, and that's it. She's done. She's dead. Magneto's executed her. And here he pulls together from the elements around him his costume and his helmet. And here he says his farewell to them. My people are in danger, more so now than ever before, from the Hellfire Club and their accursed Shadow King. So again, what is the untold story regarding Magneto and the Shadow King? From foul creatures such as this, perhaps even from the very United Nations, which Colonel Fury loyally serves. And a kinder, gentler Magneto cannot save them. But he's not becoming a supervillain again. This citadel will not long outlive its mistress, Rogue. I suggest you depart with all precipitate haste. Fury here, laconically, thanks for the tip. That's quite funny. But how do we clear Zaladane's slaves out of here? So Rogue's got an idea. Her mutant powers are back. She uses Worm, and she gets everyone out by having his hypnotic powers over people. But Magneto is gone. We'll learn where he goes in X-Men, Adjectiveless X-Men #1. He goes to Asteroid M. We're determined to remain above the world, a Nietzschean Übermensch, beyond good and evil. So that is quite the conclusion to the whole question of whether Magneto would go evil again or become good again. No, neither. Something else, a third option. And his first-person narration concludes, would we were all so fortunate as to be released from bondage, but the chains we forge for ourselves, tempered by hardship and grief, honed by duty, are often all too tragically unbreakable. She, that's Rogue, looks after me, a last imploring entreaty. That part of me will always yearn to accept, but my choice is made, my destiny set, and from this fateful crossroads, we go our separate ways. Really, really good stuff, great stuff, top work from Claremont, and of course from Jim Lee and the pencils, but Claremont doing much more with the art, like the storytelling, the images that Lee produces, than I think that Lee would have imagined. And then we're at, is it Chandelar or Candelar? In any case, the Shi'ar throne world. And we have Lilandra proclaiming that she is once again Magistrax of the Shi'ar. And it's time to party, and everybody is delighted. Hail Lilandra, hail, they all shout. And then we have the party afterwards. We see the X-Men adorned in Shi'ar fashion. And there's a little piece of dialogue there between Lilandra and Storm, who's still wondering about why Deathbird brought the X-Men here. We're sworn enemies. yet she seems certain we would help her. And the professor responds, who can fathom the thought processes of a mad woman? Forge here, as I said earlier, he's still amazed and wondering about a whole different galaxy, a civilization where humanoids are the exception. That was old before Homo sapiens ever existed. This is fantastic. So he's enjoying himself, and then he's caught the eye of one of the Shi'ar as well. Be still my heart, he thinks. Banshee here, asking the professor, are you leaving? Affairs of state, my friend. We'll try not to be too long away. So that would seem to be all right. Where's Wolverine? Not all the X-Men were there. Well, he's out scrapping in a Shi'ar bar. And Psylocke, meanwhile, has just had a bath and she's beginning meditation, but she's uneasy. She says, she thinks to herself, I wish I could relax more. I feel constantly on edge, as though still in combat. I know Xavier is the X-Men's mentor, but whenever I'm close by, I sense and then she's grabbed, knocked unconscious, and hauled away by the hair by someone, a humanoid figure. So what is going on? We're building towards a shock cliffhanger conclusion. Meanwhile, Jubilee is also exploring the palace, and she gets lost, but finds something unexpected. Deathbird, ill-treated and on the ground. And also we've got Gladiator and Oracle, prisoners. And Oracle lashes out at some mysterious figure in silhouette. And the mysterious figure is a match for her psychic power. And then Jubilee is shocked as a hand is placed on her shoulder, and it turns out to be Gambit, who was sneaking around and is also someone who felt not exactly, that things were not exactly as they seemed. And so he and Jubilee observe this mysterious figure use his powers against Gladiator and force him to bow before him on the ground. Further orders, Eminence, asks the Shi'ar guard. Deathbird has proven herself unsuitable for the plan. Dispose of her. Her sister Lilandra will prove an ideal alternative, and the Earthlings? Equally promising, if not more so, as breeding stock. What is going on? Turn the page. Big shock. Professor X. We should have no trouble with the X-Men after all. Am I not their their revered mentor? They will do my bidding out of the love and respect they have for me. And he continues, if they resist, I will simply crush them as easily as I have the Imperial Guard. By whatever means necessary, they will serve the cause, and we've no further need of them. They will be destroyed. So what an ending to this double-sized celebration of 275 issues of the X-Men. Next up, Hopscotch. Very, very good stuff. Well, I do hope that you enjoyed this review and commentary on issue 275. Let me know your thoughts on this in the comment section to the video. And if you enjoyed my review and commentary, please like the video on YouTube and consider sharing it. It really does help the channel. If you haven't done so already, subscribe to the channel and stay tuned for more content like this.